Hollie Heikkinen, how are you? Welcome to the magic.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled that you're here joining us today, and you're coming at us from Detroit, yeah?
Yes, I am.
Oh
I
my
see a little
goodness.
Detroit behind you.
Yes, yeah. So this is what anchors me back home in
Yeah.
the space, and I just love the statue of the spirit of Detroit. For me, it sparks hope and resilience, and that's really what this series of conversations is about here today.
And I'd add one more word, rebirth, which is, I think, what a lot of us are experiencing right now.
Rebirth, which so many of us are experiencing right now. And we've got, in our comments here, we've got a lot of, yeah, for the Mitten State and Detroit. What up, though, for those of you who know what that is, you're from the D. Well, Hollie, welcome to this series of impromptu conversations. In the space of 2.5 days, we pulled together this fabulous group of people. And first and foremost, I want to thank you for opening space in what is a tumultuous time for everybody, and particularly because of the kind of work that you do as CEO and founder of iWorker Innovations. I mean, you are right in the thick of what's happening for so many small business owners and independent contractors. So why don't you give us a little scoop on you and what your day-to-day is like, and then we can dive into the importance of preparedness and preparation that really leads to freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. It's an honor to be here. For the last 26 years, I've been labeled as a serial entrepreneur, covering multiples of types of companies. And this time, about 5 years ago, almost right around the same month, I started to focus on something different. I wanted to focus on how could I better serve that independent workforce, those millions of people out there that are basically on their own. Nobody seems to see them, the policy making space, I must say, until now, which we'll get to in a little bit. But until this time, until the year 2020, I would say that the majority of state and federal governments hadn't really paid attention to this independent workforce, the self-employed freelancers, gig workers, whatever you want to call yourself, right? But today they're heard. And I would say it's a long 5 years of working very close with the past CEO of Kelly Services, Carl Camden, the Kelly Services team, and establishing a national association for independent workers called IPSE. People, if they want to look at it, they can take a peek at ipse.us, not to pitch for it, but it's here for you guys. And we'll talk about some of the things later. But what it really exists for is that political voice. Nowhere ever has this political voice been represented in the state or federal level. Now we're consolidating, we're out there advocating, we're making sure that legislation like the relief bill that was just passed and the stimulus package includes, for the first time, independent workers. So these kind of things are what we're doing, educating people on how to run their micro businesses, how to find access to portable benefits, and how to gather in groups to make sure that what it is that you as an individual type of worker is represented.
Yes. Well, it's amazing and powerful work, and in this time where this is yet one more space where things that, in my perception, and tell me if I'm missing something, but things were moving along in kind of an incremental fashion, and we start to see California playing with some legislation that begins to shape thinking around this, and a little bit at the national level. But then all of a sudden, we're here, and what many of us had assumed would be technological factors that are shifting what work is, what contractual relationships around work are, and what they look like. All of a sudden, this virus makes it happen today.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so this representation feels even more important.
Yeah, and so what you're talking about is, I believe, the AB5 bill that was passed in California. And ironically, there's a lot of good and bad around that, I believe. A lot of it negative. The reality is it was a real attack against the platform companies, and that's really, it's not the way that the world is going to continue to work. There's like 30 to 50 different exemptions on your work style within it. I mean, it's just, but the heart of it I get. So I even have had conflicting things. The heart of it I get is because there are people out there that just want to make sure that everybody's protected and not taken advantage of. So right now it's kind of ironic that this negative legislation in some ways, against this independent worker is taking place. But now we're at a day today where everyone is wishing that the majority of their workers are independent workers.
Yeah.
So it's like such a time as this,
Yeah. And so speaking of such a time as this, the theme, you and I could have taken our conversation in infinite directions.
Yeah.
So Hollie and I met back, I guess, last October. I was speaking at a conference for automakers, and Hollie was there, and we just connected, not only in terms of business ideas and strategy, but also really how to approach how we think about the world in general. And when you sent over this idea, I just absolutely love it. So this notion that by protecting, preparing, and planning right now, taking decisive action right now, we can come up with vision, we can have some certainty in the face of this unknown, which really translates into freedom. So Hollie, will you talk to us a little bit about this notion of preparedness and how we can even approach this in the face of so much unknowing and constant disruption?
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I would say I can't help but think of a Bible scripture, and I hope that's not offensive to anybody, but for me, that's been a path that's, brought a lot of light to my life. There's a portion that says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And so I've been contemplating that all day, going, what does that mean for now? And the reality is that there is all this noise. There's so much noise in our worlds, in our, the media, the people that are fear laden in our own lives. We don't have this time to be quiet, to just contemplate, to be, more introspective. And I think that if we really just calm ourselves for a moment right now and just listen and not feel like we have to even talk to ourselves, if we take these moments just to be patient and quiet, we're going to see so many things coming to our own space that has so much value and benefit, not only to our personal lives, but to our businesses, into those that we are bringing into our businesses, or those that, as Matt was saying, that are advisors to our business or investors in our business. We have a lot of opportunity, but I believe that this is a day that we're supposed to be at. I know it sounds very scary, and, it's unfortunate what is happening to so many people. But for those of us that aren't in that, and we're on the outside of the turmoil and the crisis of the coronavirus right now, take it as an opportunity. Don't sit there with doom and gloom and stressed out. Take it as a moment, just be quiet and listen to yourself and start to strategize. So I believe in those moments is where you'll start to get the vision, and you'll start to, for my own self, I've been thinking, I've been running this startup for 5 years now. It's not really a startup anymore. It really is, because we're constantly developing, right? And I even realized that there's just so many voices and so many people. And being the CEO, everybody has ideas that they want to bring to you, or they want to create strategies for you, or they want to, money should be spent here, it should go there. You're the one leading your own business right now. You're the CEO of it. It's maybe you're, sole proprietor, it's a single member LLC. You're the one running this. You're the one responsible. And something that I believe Matt said, or maybe it was one of the questions, is that we actually really do have an opportunity to be more that ambivert. You have to use all this past experience and get it out there, because somebody else said, what do you do when you're sitting here and on your own, and it is a struggle? Well, it needs to be twofold. You need to be introverted and you need to be extroverted, and find the balance in between the two right now, just to kind of look at things holistically and source out the noise.
Yeah. And so in the sorting out of the noise, because there's information coming at us, not only from the individuals in our lives, but from media and other places, how do we connect that sorting out and that listening with translating it into action, and action that's not based in fear, because that's probably, in my experience anyway, that's the worst place to make a decision from. When you're afraid, that's when you start to make big mistakes, but not from a place of fear, but from a place of empowered action.
Yeah, so I heard something earlier today that just kind of struck me a little bit differently, is, the imminent war isn't war as we've known war before. It's war with a virus, right?
Yeah.
So but I use that and I likened that to war. So if we were in a war, what would we be doing and preparing behind the scenes and strategizing? We would be taking a hard look at our enemy, right? What does the enemy plan to do? How do we think they're going to attack here, there, and making sure we're covered all the way around. We can't do that with our businesses or our personal lives or our emotions unless we first, and that's going back to what I was trying to say earlier, if we go first and we start to look at those outside noises and we put micro assessments on each of them. So I hope that's somehow answering what you're asking me, but go into it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. Just simply putting a little bit more structure around, because leading up to this call today, I was getting a lot of email messages and people were calling my phone saying, hey, I can't be there, but I'm worried about this, or I'm thinking about that. And that an underlying theme that keeps coming up is it's just so loud. There's so much noise out here. And so there's confusion, what do I listen to? How do I even find a north for myself in the face of this? So that was a big question there.
And that's what it's for each of us individually to decide. Yeah. And until we be quiet, until we be honest with ourselves, we can't discern that.
Yeah, I love this. Honest for your business, because you know your business. Honest for yourself, because you know yourself best. And then as we're looking at the landscape, so one of the things that you mentioned is the opportunity that's available inside of this. And so how do we begin to look for that opportunity? I mean, I've got some ideas, but how do we begin to see the opportunity for ourselves when everything, again, feels so confusing and abrupt?
Yeah, I think we have to look at things differently today. We really are in a different time. We all knew 2020 was going to be a very different year, and it would be tumultuous. Yeah. But everything bad, at least throughout my life, and I almost challenge each of you to look at your own lives, but often embedded in bad, there is good. There's much good, but the trick to that is your own perception, right? And there's a choice embedded in that too. You have a choice to be a victim, or you have a choice to be a survivor. Yes. And what does that mean to you? So the reality is, a victim and a survivor experience the same exact things. Yep. The same exact things, but it is a mental choice. It's like you have to get your own cerebral capital right. You got to build it up. You got to deposit good into your own cerebral capital, and then you're going to get there. So.
Absolutely. No, I love this distinction. So in the work that I have been doing about the future of work and how we prepare ourselves for an uncertain future, which again, my underlying assumption was that it's going to be technology. It has been a virus that's brought this upon us. There's a framework that's mindset, education, and collaboration. And mindset, this distinction between, are you going to be victim to what's happening, or are you going to be the captain of your circumstances? That it seems like once you get the mindset set on that, everything else kind of falls into place.
Yes, when you keep the noise down, or at a level you can withstand.
So I just got, we're getting some questions in the chat bar here. I want to make sure that I bring them to the forefront. Paul, thank you for submitting this. So Paul used to work for Chevrolet in marketing, and now he's acting as a consultant. How will large companies like automakers recover from this stop in production?
Yeah, so I can give a bit of detail around that. I'll go into a little bit of what's actually happening in the policymaking space with the relief bill and the stimulus package. But right now, there is provisions for the auto industry. That's a major provision. Actually, a couple of the automakers are starting to manufacture, I've been told, so don't validate this completely, but I've been told that they're starting to go into manufacturing of the components for ventilators and different things like that. So as they're shutting down, unfortunately, they're letting some people go, but there's some that with a skill set that are still there. But the trick is, as a consultant, I think we're going to have to sit and wait a little bit. I mean, this is where I titled what I wanted to talk about, protect, prepare, and plan. And I did that for a reason, because unfortunately, we are at a day today where often, none of us have spent the time in the past protecting, preparing, and planning for our future. And I would say, let this be a lesson for us right now. And, I say this almost with a very, very loving prophetic edges, but we have an opportunity right now. We're going to go through other things in life. This is a season. This will end. This too shall pass, kind of as my grandma used to say. It's not going to be here. But this is the importance of protecting yourself and planning for the next steps in your life. And I bring up, there's so many opportunities, especially as a consultant. There's a lot of platforms out there now. There's one that I know of called Moonlighting, for example, and there's a lot of different ones, the Upwork and, on and on. But go and look at those platforms, because a lot of companies that haven't necessarily arranged their company and based off of independent work or consultants and what have you, they're looking for your talent right now. So there is hope if you just utilize the technological resources that are out there, like those platforms. So get on there, do some Google searching, and you'll find some things definitely. But the auto industry as a whole, I think we're going to have to sit tight. I don't feel that I'm at leisure, to speak too much about what I think is happening for them exactly yet.
Yeah, well, and what I love though about what you're saying, that pulling to consultants in general, and then people who drive their business out of generating and negotiating contracts with larger organizations, the assumptions about the silos where we used to work, and that we could only work in a particular industry, or that we could only have a certain kind of client because of assumptions that we have about our skills or what we are skilled in. It sounds like, and this is my bias also, but it sounds like those silos are coming down, which opens up so much more opportunity.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to being more, introspective and looking at yourself and really assessing that your skills probably actually are skills that have application across many verticals. Yeah. Just because you might have been a consultant, in the auto industry, it doesn't mean you can't take those consulting skills into other industries right now. So look at it, in different ways. And also in the entire business space, like this is going to be a next phase, and it's my belief that entrepreneurship is going to increase, that innovation after we get through this is going to increase. This is causing a whole myriad of issues that haven't been addressed. So use those skills and start planning and capturing them, write them down, start talking with other people, form your own little think tanks, because there's some major problems that this world has to fix, not just you and your business, or not just this country.
Yeah, look for where the problems are. Mm-hmm. And see how you can help solve those problems, and be able to solve on the face of this.
Yes, there's so much opportunity, and that's why this is a very hard time to be in right now. I'd be the first to say it. I'm disturbed. I have parents that haven't been out of the house in 4 weeks, and I can't go there. Like there's all these sad things, a little grandchild with coughing issues, like things like this, and it's just like, but we can't choose to focus on it. If it comes and infiltrates us, then we have to stay focused on it. But right now, we need to stay positive, and we need to stay looking forward with the vision.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I love what you were saying about the component of protect, prepare, and plan, like this as a lesson to us, and how to think about moving forward. So let's take the case that, I assumed that the market was going to be continuing growing forever and ever and ever, and I over leveraged myself in my business, and so I find myself in a tight spot right now. What kinds of thinking and actions can I take to say, okay, my bad, I screwed up, next time I'll do better, but right now, how can I protect, prepare, and plan so that the stuff that unfolds going forward can be more positive for me, and I have a better chance of standing on my 2 feet and making it through this healthily? Yeah,
so I first and foremost do want to, encourage everyone that there is relief coming. And I brought it up earlier in the conversation that, the federal government is for the first time actually looking at this independent workforce as a viable part of our economy and realizes its value. Yeah. So it's unbelievable to me to be at this point right now. Even in some of the health things that are that are embedded in the stimulus package, there's things about independent workers. So hope is coming, but the problem is, how do we get through these next few weeks until we actually figure out how can you apply for these sort of things, and when is the government going to distribute, and what have you. So, I mean, it's pretty simple in so many ways, is when you're in financial disarray, if you don't have the wherewithal, you need to reach out to maybe an entity like GreenPath, for example. They're a national debt consolidation company, but we got to get very basic right now.
Yeah.
We have to cut the fat, per se, for lack of better words, but really sit down with your finances, look at your, checking account and your savings. What is going in and what is going out? What can you cut? Do you really need all these expenses, like the television, the movies and all the apps you have bought, your iPhone? Obviously you can't go get the coffee anymore, but there's little things that you can cut. And it's really shocking sometimes. I've sat with people for over 20 years now and helped them review their finances. But if you really, again, be honest with yourself and look at all those expenses and make a serious concerted effort to just tally them all up, look at it whole, and then start to make, changes in that. It seems so simple, but it's so important right now. And the other thing is, I'm not here to give any financial advice per se, but I would, definitely reach out to a financial advisor or somebody of that nature. For one, if they're used to advising people in an office, they're too struggling. So let's see if they can help you make some different changes, diversify, or take some of your money out of a market that is so volatile, those sort of things. And this is, of course, assuming that people actually, have access to resources and maybe retirement savings and those things right now. If you don't, there's a lot of different states doing different, types of mini stimulus, or groups doing stimulus packages. Don't be afraid to say you're struggling. I've talked to several people this last week that are independent workers that live week to week. Yeah. One guy, for example, pregnant, is with a second child, and, his wife, they don't have health insurance and all these kind of things. And I'm like, what, let's try to band together. It's in Detroit, so let's band together and try to do something for you artists that are in the hip hop or arts. Think about others. If we have a bit, don't be afraid to give a little bit, because it will come back to you too.
Yeah, and I love this sentiment. And by the way, everybody, if you have questions, you can type them either into the chat bar here or into the Q&A. We want to make sure that we address them before Hollie has to go. But I love this idea of sharing, of sharing what you have, both in terms of material goods, but also, especially since there's so much confusion going on, which is actually the reason why we're here together in this conversation, sharing our knowledge, sharing the resources that we know or that have access to. You're talking about GreenPath today, or Moonlighting, or other platforms and resources. I'd be willing to bet the mortgage that there are people on this call that needed to hear and know that, that needed to understand the importance of preparedness. So coming together and sharing your ideas, your creativity with others is also incredibly important in this time.
Oh, absolutely. And being transparent, right? And honest with each other. Another thing that I've struggled in, and I use the analogy, I have 4 kids, 3 of which are adults now. And, I live in an area where everybody's kid is perfect, but I lived in a way that mine wasn't always. I look like the odd person, but I always want to be real, right? I can't get value and I can't get help from others if I'm not real and transparent. So don't be ashamed, right? We're all hindered by our lack of certain education. And that education takes on many different components. It could be financial education. It could be business development, marketing, sales development, all these sort of things for our businesses. If we are not doing good in one of those areas, we have to reach out to others, or we'll never be able to really define and refine the problem.
Yeah, and shifting away from this thinking, this is one of the other things that I'm experiencing myself and I'm seeing unfold here. You move away from this, I think I know all the things about my universe, so I'm not going to ask outside of it, and needing to cross that barrier. No person is an island, and so being able to source at a community level or with somebody else the information that you need. We had a question come in here from Mohammed. Thanks again for this. Besides the tech skills, how do you consider systems thinking and systems theories as primary or secondary skills for millennials?
Ooh, that's an interesting one that I must say too, I am not completely an expert in. So maybe Elatia can give a little bit more insight in that one.
So I think so that there are a lot of assumptions in that are underlying in this question as I read through them, you know, that certain skills are necessarily the things that we need, that in a particular age group, it's one set of skills versus another set of skills. I think, you know, as we're looking at how we might place ourselves in the market now and how we might position ourselves in terms of negotiating contracts or even being in these kinds of conversations that Matt was talking about in the previous half hour block, being in a place of discovery. So I might think that systems thinking and systems theory is the thing that I need to know in order to get the job, etc. But it might be a component of it and not actually the thing. So I would probably take a few steps back from that thinking and question my assumptions about whether or not that's too specific, or there might be an opportunity to open myself up to greater connection in terms of the job market. So Holly, as we're coming to the bottom of the hour here, what would you like to leave folks with? So we have people on the call literally from all over the world, and people who are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and looking for some structure and would love to be in this place of vision, certainty, and freedom that you talk about. So what would you leave with folks as we are wrapping up our call today?
Yeah, I would leave with you to trust yourself.
Yeah.
To really push yourself into a space of being able to discern. To be honest with yourself, obviously, is extremely important. Don't let the, I guess, the ways of the world, you know, the common thread of dissension and just the continuous disruption eat at your mind, right? It's okay to be different. It's okay to think outside the box. It's okay to apply things in different ways than you're commonly seeing done. I talked about cutting the fat. I think sometimes during times like this, we really realize who matters in our lives, you know, and I encourage people to make changes in their lives. There are people in your life, some of you right now, those people are sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
They've been destroying you for a long time. They don't want your success to take place. And unfortunately, if you don't slow down, you don't listen, you don't discern, you don't be honest with yourself, you won't be able to get over those things and get to the other side. You won't come out of this a survivor. You will continually be a victim.
Yeah.
Those are the, I mean, there's so much I could say. I just want everybody to be encouraged. Like, this is, yes, the worst thing that we have been through in our lives, right? We haven't seen a global pandemic like this in 200 years practically, right? It's not an easy time, but we have so many things to be thankful for. You know, like technology like this, we're still joining with each other. Yes, we're not in physical presence, but we're still joining and talking, and actually we're doing it instantly. You know, last night I'm talking to somebody in Paris, or, you know, it's just like, I would never have been able to do those things. And it's like, we need to be grateful for what is here. You know, there's so much that we actually need. Focus on those important things, those important people. Focus on, you know, cutting the fat out of your life. Mm-hmm. Be honest with yourself. Draw a line in the sand. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spend money on this. I'm not going to keep allowing that person to, you know, suck life out of me, and I'm constantly giving back to them and they're not giving to me. Like, you can't, you've got to change something. And this is a perfect opportunity. And as odd as it sounds, people are going to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. It's stepping into that empowered place for yourself, because there's an assumption that if you set a boundary that might be limiting yourself in some way, but actually setting boundaries can be one of the most empowering actions that you can take, and to only let the things in and the people in who are going to help you thrive. And that discipline that you're talking about in terms of not spending the money or being honest about your numbers, that discipline leads to the freedom that we're really looking for.
You can't lead others if you don't have vision. Yeah. And that's this is all about.
Yeah. Well, Hollie, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your afternoon with us. I'm getting gorgeous comments here that you'll be able to see, but we've got a lot of like amens and preaches and folks wanting you to stop by Midtown later on today. So,
Oh, good.
thank you so much, Hollie. You make my heart so warm, and you are such a heart-based leader.
Thank you. I care. No one is alone.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.